brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Hello and welcome to this Suds episode where everything good in life is worth discussing. I am one of your hosts with a really bad British accent, good old boy Mike.
Dude, you sound like you're running from dingoes right now.
It honestly gets worse every time you do it.
I know, it's terrible. I am good old boy Mike. Joining me here at the table is good old boy Dave.
Hello.
Even worse, Reverend Mark.
Hello.
And our special co-host, good old boy Steve.
Yo, how you doing?
That's good. Steve is a co-host of another broadcast called Beer O'Clock, which is based in the UK, and we'll get to hear more about that show at the end of this episode today. Our side segments are all about beer, and more beer, and today we'll be discussing beers from Fuller's of London. And so, to make things a bit interesting, let me turn this down just a bit. I've invited our host to talk in fake accents from England and vice versa for Steve. Now, Steve thinks that he can't turn on his best American, but I am betting with enough beer and time, everyone should sound utterly ridiculous by the end of this show. I'm quite convinced of that.
Probably by the beginning of the show.
Well, yes. I mean, I turned on my best dingo right from the get-go, right, Dave? So it was an epic fail right from the get-go. Now, we only have one other rule for this episode, and that is that Reverend Mark will be permitted only 3 Monty Python references during the show, which is one more than his usual. So, can you handle it?
Answer me these questions. 3.
I can already hear it.
Waste of time.
It is. It's going to be a complete waste of time. I'm quite certain of that. Steve is going to get the honors of going over our Suds ratings for today. Take it away, Steve.
Okay, so at number 1, you've got That Sucks, Give Me Anything But a Bud.
Does he know what a bud is?
I absolutely know what a bud is, and it's something that I actively avoid in every pub that I'm in.
Wow, that's too bad.
Yeah.
I actually know what InBev is in England. All right.
Oh, yeah, all over it. So we're on to number 2 now?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Was that a belch? Ah, what a relief. A body should not really make that sound.
We say that to Dave on a regular basis.
My wife.
Listen to that hang time, guys. Give me another.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
On to the rest of the show. Today's show is a Brewery Takeover episode. That was just brilliant, Steve. We'll be talking about beer from one brewery today, and that is going to be Fuller's. The beer we are going to be discussing today, there's 3 of them, and I'm talking in an Aussie accent once again, all the way from McLaren Vale.
This is a Fuller show, not a Foster's.
Yes, exactly right. So bad. See, if we brought on the Aussie guys at the same time we had Steve on, then it would be covered. So, still, it's horrible. 3 beers we're going to talk about today. Fuller's ESB, Fuller's London Pride, and Fuller's London Porter, the 3 beers that we're going to go over. Now, let me discuss this whole thing about the accents. I have narrowed the scope of these accents down for each country. There are 3 that we should pull off for each country. The first and the most important one, American one, is from Brooklyn. You know, like Beastie Boys Brooklyn. Like, you know...
Hey. That's all you got to say is just, hey.
Vinny's going to live in Brooklyn, but he's also going to be from Jersey, too. You come across the bridge, you know, you talk to guys, and, Brooklyn. So that's the first American accent. Second, and it's a very fond and very close to us here at this table, so it's not very hard for us to pull this off, which is full Southern, full Alabama redneck. Everybody's just about right.
That's basically what I sound like all the time.
And everybody goes, y'all ain't speaking no English, are you? I'm speaking English. It's Southern.
We don't like your kind around here.
You sure have a pretty beer.
I like your queen. Oh, man. Just we can't do that. The last one is going to be Texan, where everybody is slowing down just a little bit. Be talking Texan. In the big wide open space, we got beer. There ain't no bad beer. It's just beer, boy.
Drinking a Lone Star.
All right, so that's your three choices there, Steve. Which one are you going to pick?
I might dip in and out of the three, depending on how much beer I've drunk.
Oh, okay. There we go. So for the Americans, the British accents are the three that we have to pick from. And I'm probably going to be throwing in some Australian just to boot through this. You can count on it, apparently. The first one is London, which is pithy and poshy, and everyone talks like this, and up and down, and scope, and they just go up and down as the chin just bobs up and down.
Wow. He really hasn't had that much beer, Steve.
In all my life, I've never heard a London accent like that. I really haven't.
So you mean people really don't make their chin go up and down?
No.
It goes pithy and poshy, and the chin goes up and down. All right, so the second one is Cockney English, or what I call full-blown chimney sweep. So you're thinking Dick Van Dyke. Step in time, everybody step in time.
Hang on, Dick Van Dyke was the worst Cockney accent in history. That's been established. It's really not right, the Dick Van Dyke accent.
Actually, Steve, I don't want to correct you, but after Mike today, I'm pretty sure Dick Van Dyke was the second.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. The Cockney accent is nothing like that. Cockney accent is more like, all right, Treacle, how you doing?
Oh, and I forgot to say, I have theme songs for each of these. So the first, London is, you have to have, God Save the Queen for, London accents. That's what you're going to hear. Go ahead, stand, Steve. All right, so the theme song for Cockney is going to be the boys from Queen.
I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening me.
Galileo,
Figaro. Magnifico!
All right, and the last accent that I think we're going to have to pull off from England is obviously going to have to be the boys from Liverpool, because everything is going swishy and swashy in Liverpool. How about you doing a little love, let me do from the boys of the Beatles?
Love me do.
You know I love you. It's like a dead British dog. I'm quite convinced that having the proper accent is going to help Dave enjoy all this beer, all the better. At least he won't get confused about where the beer is from today.
Well, I have decided I will do a French accent because the English and the Americans both agree that no one deserves mockery more than the French.
That's true. We will definitely agree that. The French actually suck more. Well, it's great that we're going to get to talk about Fuller's today, and I want to give you a bit more of some background on Fuller's while talking in my favorite pithy, poshy London accent here, as Steve just wants to cringe onto the rug as I'm bobbing my head up and down. All right, maybe I'll get through some of this. I doubt it. Beer has been made in the part of capital for more than 350 years. Now, dating back to the era of Oliver Cromwell, back then it was quite common for large households to brew their own beer. Oh, the odor. In a letter to his brother in 1828, Henry Thompson boasted of increasing sales from 8,000 to 24,000 barrels. things continued to head in the right way, and in 2013, we sold at Fuller's over 334,000 barrels of beer. John Fuller was a wealthy country gentleman who did not talk anything like this, and he jumped at the chance to come aboard, investing primarily on behalf of his son. He soon bought one of the Thompsons out, and within a couple of years found himself the majority shareholder at the brewery. In 1839, John Fuller died and passed control to his son, John Bird Fuller. Now, who would name their kid Bird? Seriously.
Larry Bird.
That he's from America. He doesn't count. Seriously, have you heard of another English person with the name Bird?
I can't say that it's a name that's popular over here.
There you go. I agree. Let's just say that sucks.
I think it sucks.
I think it sucks. I think it really sucks. Well, I mean, what would you call him?
That's kind of harsh.
No, I thought about this. Man. I can hear, his mother going, "Here, Jay Bud. Here, Jay Bud.
Jay Bud.
Come here, boy." All right. The younger Fuller moved quickly to make his mark. By 1845, oh gosh. I don't know if I can get through this.
He's not going to make it, folks. He's not going to make it.
All right, look. The younger Fuller moved quickly to make his mark, and by 1845, he severed ties with the Pishy-Pothy Thompsons to make the reins by himself. Following incorporation, a wave of acclaimed ales came out of the brewery. Chesick Bitter arrived on the scene in 1930, and into the 1950s, London Pride took center stage. Then, in 1971, ESB was launched. Thank goodness. So it's a little bit about Fuller's, and I am quite confident that after hearing most of this that we have been banned from Fuller's.
It's possible.
We may be banned from England.
Which is exactly what we're aiming for all the time.
Passports revoked.
I can hear them going, "Please don't admit that."
Yeah.
Now, Steve, I know that you've actually spent some time in an extensive interview, which your audience and our audience can go back and catch, from Beer O'Clock with John Keeling, who is the brewing director at Fuller's. So what else is there about Fuller's that we missed in that overview, other than basically anything that was understandable?
Well, in a nutshell, John Keeling's been with Brewers been with Fuller's for 30 odd years now, and he gave us quite a few hours of his time a few months back to talk about the history. And yes, they've been brewing on the site in London for around about 350 years. There's been a Fuller's presence on that site. They first launched their own Fuller's beer in 1829, and then in 1845 they got involved with the Smith and Turner families as well. So Fuller, Smith and Turner have been brewing on that site for many a year. Smith and Turner not so much involved anymore, but it's very much now Fuller's is a family business, and as you say, London Pride, launched in 1959, is their probably most popular beer around the world now that they export and produce in London. And then, as you also mentioned, 1971 they released the ESB, which is their extra special bitter, and John is very, very clear in terms of saying that ESB as a style of beer didn't exist before Fuller's released it. So Fuller's were the first brewery to release an ESB, and therefore John's view is that you can't get more craft than actually inventing your own style. So therefore Fuller's are the original craft brewery because they invented their own style of beer.
Huh. What drove that? Was it a certain bittering hop that they cultivated? Is that what kind of drove that, guys?
It was a number of things. It was a move towards I suppose at that time, 1971 was when you had the resurgence of sort of fizzy beers. You know, the mass-produced beers were beginning to come into popular culture, and at that point, Fuller's wanted to almost regain what was special about bitters and ales and proper, malty beers. So therefore, the ESB was launched at that time.
I wonder if that was cask only, and I wonder how different it probably tasted, because carbonation wasn't introduced probably until the 50s. Is that about right, guys? So I really wonder what is the difference, between that original ESB and the one that we have, here in the bottle. That is probably a slightly different beer, and I'm sure they've had to adjust, based on the introduction of the CO2, through time as well. So the most important question I had, though, Steve, is there anyone with the middle name Bird at Fuller's?
I don't believe there is, no.
I think it should be a requirement. Kind of like John Booty from,
Every generation should have a Bird in their middle name.
Well, his name was John, so I just figured I'm John Bird Keeling.
Yeah.
I'm John Bird this, I'm John Bird that. I think you just have the whole name go around. In order to work at Fuller's, you got to change your name. Well, it's really great, and I appreciate the overview on Fuller's, and it is great to taste such a historic and storied beer from England as well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go around and talk about these three beers, offer up our tasting notes, and rate our each of these beers with our Suds ratings. Up first is going to be Reverend Mark, and we're going to go over London Pride. It's going to be the first beer that we're going to go over. Reverend Mark, what do you think about this beer?
All right. Well, this takes me back to the early 90s when the Sherlock Holmes pub first opened. And this was on tap, and you got to enjoy this with a perpetual loop. In those days, it was still VHS of the Goonies and Benny Hill.
That's borderline.
Wow.
That's borderline,
back to back. It was owned by some expats, a guy named John and his daughter Elizabeth.
Wow.
Wow, man.
We're making friends left and right here, buddy.
And you just hold it right there. You can't come into the country. You go to France, not here. Right?
And then there were darts and a snooker table, which was, as you know, invented by the British Army when they owned India. So I got introduced to real beer for the first time. As we know, since the repeal of Prohibition in America, all we have had is near beer until real beer came around. And so London Pride, at least for me, was my first sort of journey into flavor. And for a beer that is quaffable, is light, it still has some complexity that's to this day worth commenting on. So I love it. And the Fuller yeast is very distinctive as well.
What's your Suds rating on this?
I'll give this one a 3.
How about that? What a relief, as most of our audience is saying the same thing. Dave, what do you think about London Pride here?
Well, I think this is a great beer to demonstrate what a good session beer, a good session ale can be. Something where you can just go and you can get a spot at the bar and keep your seat and just have a nice drinking session. Good malt and bitter balance. Shows a lot of restraint in both, and it's just a very drinkable beer. I would give London Pride a 4.
Wow, a 4. How about that? A body should really not make that sound. Steve, what do you think about London Pride? What are your tasting notes?
London Pride's an interesting beer for us guys over here because it was very much it was designed in a different era from where we are now, when people used to go to the pub and they used to drink pint after pint after pint after work, and so it was designed with drinkability in mind. which was probably the most important thing that Fuller's had in mind when they produced this beer. And when we interviewed John a few months back, he said that you don't begin to appreciate London Pride until you're a quarter of the way down your third pint and heading into your fourth pint of this beer. That's when it really comes into its own.
Full mental faculties is an important aspect of consuming this particular beer.
So, for us, it's kind of it's Fuller's most produced beer. It's the beer that's drunk most around the world by people in terms of Fuller's. For me, yes, it's got that Fuller's yeast, it's got that Fuller's malt backbone to it. There's a little bit of drinkability in that, but for me, I've got to go for a 3 on this.
How about that? What a relief. Well, we're going to say that your Alabama accent sucks. All right. London Pride. So, London Pride is a pithy, poshy, pasteurized beer. Wow. Hey, you guys didn't do it. So somebody has to pull off the show.
There was a reason.
I know. It's a pithy, poshy London Pride. It's a very good beer. And, the one thing that struck me more than anything, other than this really horrible way that I'm sounding right now, is it's like a malt factory in my mouth. It just goes on and on and on and on. And it's just extraordinary how this beer has so much malt in it. Sessionable is an understatement. I failed to mention some of the key characteristics of this beer. Other than it being made by Fuller's, the ABV on this is 4.7%. So it is definitely considered a sessionable beer and is classified as a premium bitter ESB. So if you're looking for a malt factory in your mouth, pick up a London's Pride. You'll be very, very happy. I'm going to give this a Suds rating of 3. What's a relief. All right, that covers 2 of our beers here, and we're going to take a quick segment break and be right back with our next beer from Fuller's. Welcome back to Sips, Suds, and Smokes. I am one of your hosts here, good old boy Mike. It's a pithy, poshy day here as we're discussing Fuller's of London and all things British. We must caution you that we are talking in really bad fake British accents for the duration of this episode if you happen to have muted us during the first segment. We thank you for coming back with us as we discuss more Fuller's beer. Okay, so the next beer that we're going to have up is going to be Fuller's ESB. I failed to read the background on this the first time. This time I'm going to get it before it gets around. So this is also considered a premium bitter ESB. It is from England, made by Fuller's. The ABV on this is 5.9%. Hey, Steve, do you know a little bit about the distribution of Fuller's? I mean, I know we can get it here in the States, but how broad is their distribution? Do you have any idea? Very popular in London, being where they're based.
There are a number of pubs in London that they own which distribute the Fuller's beers. You can probably find them around the country as well. London Pride, probably the most recognisable of the brands, which is available in the Wetherspoons chain, which is something that is all over the UK, and you can probably find it across Europe as well in terms of the London Pride availability. I was actually quite keen to ask you the same question in terms of what's the availability of Fuller's like in the States?
It's available in Brooklyn. And in Alabama, and definitely in Texas, boy. Yep, it's pretty broadly available. I have to say that These particular 3 beers that we picked today, that was part of the reason why I wanted to pick them, is because they are so widely available. There was one beer that Mark and I were talking about yesterday, the 1854, is that right?
No.
1845, I forgot.
47.
47.
45.
45.
Is it 40? That's right.
1845, yeah.
Somewhere in the mid 1800s.
Oh, boys, don't get your dates all bass backwards.
Actually,
around there.
that's my favorite, and I should know that.
Yeah, that is.
I should know that.
That's the one beer that I would have to say that when we think about going back and probably enjoying this, that would probably be a beer that we would easily swing back and have. Now, one beer that we've had is the London Porter, and we had a big porter show, Steve. We had about 27 porters in a double-blind tasting, and that was one of the porters that we had in there, mainly because it's a reference standard in the BJCP guidelines, and that was one beer that I wanted to put in there to say, when people think about porter, that should be one of the beers that should be ringing all the bells in terms of the style guidelines. So, it's fairly available on tap. I don't know. I see a lot of these on tap. How about you guys? I don't know that I've seen a whole lot of Fullers.
There's a couple of places in Nashville where I know you can get London Pride and the ESB. I don't know about the Porter.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of tap contention here in the U.S. right now with craft beer industry, and the fact that these are not InBev products. There's a lot of contention, for carrying what is generally a historic, beer and ale. So I think that's
10% of the market that they leave behind. Yeah.
I'll have that Fuller's craft beer.
Yeah, and there's just such a flood in the local market on pale ales, India Pales, and even variations of porter. So it's just really trying to compete for tap space. It's getting more difficult.
All right, Reverend Mark, let's swing back around to talk about Fuller's ESB in your best British.
In my best British, no, it's not. It's not good. It's not good at all.
It's like a direct inbreeding between somebody from Wales and Alabama. It's just not happening.
My genetic ancestry is Scottish. It is Scottish. For me, the ESB, when I first started brewing 14 years ago, this was a clone recipe that I came across, and I would brew this at least once a year. Now, I don't know if it really gets all the parameters. I'm sure it doesn't with the Fuller's Company, but one thing that always kept me coming back to this beer was the way the grist was slightly more complex with in addition to, of course, the Maris Otter is the base malt, and crystal malt. We would use flaked maize and a biscuit malt or an aromatic type malt, and then as compared to the London Pride, there were more hop additions and more kinds of hops. So you'd have Target, Challenger, East Kent Golding, and so it was just layered. So for me, the ESB, and then the 1845, I think even takes it a step further, is still a very much a benchmark that I go to. Mm-hmm. Although I haven't brewed it in a few years.
So what's your Suds rating on this?
I'm going to give this one a 4.
A 4. The body should really not make that sound. Well, great description there of Fuller's ESB. Dave, what do you think about Fuller's ESB?
Well, as often happens when I go after Mark, he's already said all the stuff I was going to say. And it actually sounds legitimate when he says it. So.
But if you would pick your best British fake accent, I'm sure it would sound more credible.
Yeah.
Well, if I had to, I guess I would say that it's a very malty, complex ale with just the right touch of bitter. So, yeah, I kind of bounce back and forth. Whenever I go, there's a place that I go here in Nashville quite a bit, and they have both London Pride and the ESB on tap. And so I tend to go back and forth and kind of bounce. from one to the other. I think both of them have a lot of the, the malt backbone, in the level of balance that goes into making them that I find are true representations of British ales. And so I would also give this one a 4.
How about that? A body should really not make that sound. Steve, what do you think about Fuller's ESB in your best Brooklyn?
Or Alabama.
Well, I think that the Fuller's is the beers are balanced on the drinkability of their beers, which are very. I'm coming across very Australian here rather than American.
It's kind of southern.
Southern, anywhere, southern hemisphere. Their beers are very well balanced and they're drinkable, and they keep you interested all the way to the bottom of their beer. This one for me, it's a go-to beer. If I see this on the bar, if it's on cask, it's something I'll try time and time again. I love the ESB. It's a really good example of what English beer can be all about. And for me, this is a 3.
Again, what a relief. Thank you, Steve. All right. Fuller's ESB in Australia.
Good day, sport.
No. We have to whip out a little bit of the Liverpool in order to talk about the Fuller's ESB, where everything is slithering and slithing. The first thing that I found about the Fuller's ESB is it's very tame. It has a sweet, lemon, tart kind of thing going on. And it's very surprising because up here in Liverpool, we like things that are just a little bit slithering and sliding across the tongue all the time. So I love Reverend Mark's comments about the referenceable hop profile and Mirasata in this with the crystallized ginger, and that's what is just so remarkable and distinctive about everything in the Fuller's ESB. So the thing that I love about this is today we're going to get to sample 2 considered referenceable beers here in the Liverpool area, where everything is pitchy and slithering and sliding across our tongue. So for this Suds rating, we're going to give this one a 3 as well, which is what a relief that good old boy Mike will start talking like he's even remotely from Liverpool. Well, there we have 2 beers down, and we have 1 more to go here. Thank goodness, is what most of our audience is saying right about now. So the last beer we're going to get to talk about is Fuller's London Porter. Reverend Mark, what do you think about this?
Oh, man. Another nostalgic journey for me. I first came across the London Porter when I flew into Heathrow on my way to the Ministry of Silly Walks.
Wow.
And I did hear that this beer was immortalized in a church song in which they sang, "Every ale is sacred, every ale is great. For every ale that's wasted, God gets quite irate."
Seek the Holy Grail.
Every beer is sacred, every beer is great.
Every beer is needed
Steve,
in
please
your
don't turn us off.
neighborhood.
I left and I've come back.
So the whole time I think Steve is just ready to crawl under a table, and he's hollering out to his wife going, "Honey, come here, listen to these Americans. They have no idea what they are saying. They sound pitiful." Back to you, Reverend Mark, on London Porter here.
Yes, but I think the London Porter for me is the benchmark. I've been using this word a lot, but the London Porter gives roast, chocolate, and just that underlying good British malt of a veritable playground on your palate. You really pick up on the roastiness, the brown malts. It's still below what would be considered a high gravity ale, at least here in America. And for me, I could just drink one after the other, after the other, after the other, until I would have to exclaim, "My brain hurts."
What's your Suds rating then on London's porter?
This really is the benchmark beer, so I'm going to give it a 5 just for being that.
Oh, yeah, totally. Listen to that hang time. Give me another. Dave Fuller's London Porter. What'd you think about this?
Well, so when I have not had London Porter as much as I've had the other two, and it's I'll copy Revermark. Yeah, it's a benchmark for the porter. And when I drink this and I think about all of the really big, crazy flavored American porters, mocha porters, Java porters, coffee porters, bourbon barrel aged porters, strawberry porters,
Cold porter.
Oh, yeah. Come on now. It just reminds you that
Just need to cut his mic off.
He's actually talking into the mic today too. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
But I think this just goes to show you that there's nothing the English can do very well that Americans can't just really take and go overboard with and just totally blow the whole damn thing up.
Yeah. The Americanization of beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes screwing out with simplicity has its consequences, and I think that's a good point, with this beer.
So I keep saying about all three of the ones we've tried today, restraint, balance, using words like that. This is very indicative of what you can do just by brewing a simple beer very well. And I would give this one a 4.
Nobody should really not make that sound. Well, so the question to the two of you, we happen to have easy access and actually know the background on what is considered probably one of the best porters here in the U.S., here at Blackstone Brewery, that has won the gold medal at GBF like 8 years in a row. And I wish I had actually brought a bottle of that along so that we could have it right alongside this, but I know you've both had the porter.
Yeah, the St. Charles
times.
Porter.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that it's an Americanization or bastardization of this?
I think
or do you
pretty
think that it's
similar.
just a very good clone?
Yeah, I think they're very similar in that they are just a well-balanced beer that, that fit the style very well.
I would differentiate. I think that the London Porter would be, to me, more of a mild porter. It would be a little bit more on the mild side, whereas the St. Charles Porter is definitely a robust.
It's bigger. Yeah, it's just a bigger beer.
Yeah.
The roastiness around it is a bit more evident.
And I think the ABV on the St. Charles is a little bit higher.
Yeah,
too, so.
probably. Well, one thing I noticed that Steve was doing while we were talking here is that we're sitting here and we're sipping and tasting cups. Steve grabs a pint, pounds down about half the glass he has. So
that's my guy right there.
Yeah, no. So this is a really interesting characteristic about getting that full mouth, feel. Or frankly, it just needs more beer here, today than just sipping, an ounce at a time. Steve, what do you think about London Porter here from Fuller's?
For me, the London Porter is one of my absolute favourite beers from Fuller's. It's very, very clear that in terms of the the heritage of breweries in London. You can't be a London brewer unless you produced a porter, because it's a style that originated in London. It was bastardised by the Irish. It was turned into stouts. the stout porter
really
argument will go on.
We totally love that. We're going to steal that time and time again. See, we thought it was the Russians, but no, you have clarified.
No, it was the Irish. They took the porter style. They created a beer called the stout porter. They then took it as their own as a stout, and essentially the stout porter argument will go on and on and on. But it's a style that originated in London, and for me, this is a beer that it just absolutely typifies the style. It's a beer that, from Fuller's perspective, they started as a cask ale that was available. It was dying on its backside, and it was your market, guys. It was the American market that saved this beer. If it wasn't for the US, they wouldn't have continued brewing this beer. It was the US that really embraced this beer. They hardly sold any of these in the UK.
I like that. You saved music, and we saved the porter.
Your export sales our export sales went through the roof because of you guys, and this beer just for me, it typifies the style. What you get in there is you get big coffee aromas. You taste it. It comes through on the flavour. It comes through on the aftertaste. You get that bitterness that you want from a nice, short, sharp espresso. I don't think you can do much better than the Fuller's London Porter in terms of this style in the UK right now.
Would you say historically that the porter is the sort of the quintessential working man's beer?
I think so. Yes, I think it's the beer that certainly you would go to if it's on in the bar. You're going to want it. It's at 5.4%. It's in terms of the percentage of beers these days, it's a fairly sessionable beer. You can go back to this time and time again. It's generally, when you see it in a bar in the UK, it's served on keg, so it's served in as a cold beer as well. And again, that's something that you guys have really embraced with this beer. The Americans really love this beer cold, and we do too. And it's something that you go to time and time again. I would happily take a 5.5% porter cold in the middle of summer against the best hop forward IPA that could be produced. I think it will work.
I like that.
It's an absolute perfect balance.
And I like to start with it cold and then just let it warm up, because then it just evolves.
Opens up, yeah.
Oh, the flavours change. You begin to get chocolate towards the end of it. That bitter sweetness of a dark chocolate. For me, this is. If I had to pin a badge on it in terms of what's the best Fuller's beer available right now, for me, London Porter outshines the rest of them time and time again.
Yeah.
So what's your Suds rating for London Porter going to be?
For me, this is a 4.
Oh, 4, huh? Nice. I thought I should really not make that sound. Well, fantastic. I had a chance to have London Porter, call it, what's it going to be? Cockney? London? Or Liverpool?
I don't think we're going to recognize
London Governor. It's London, isn't it?
Governor.
Okay. London Governor. I'll be talking like I'm from London, and we'll be talking Governor. So, London...
Not in the South African accent.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
In a London accent, maybe.
I'm probably going to be drifting between countries here and there. Continents. So...
it's all good beer. It's all good beer.
Oh, up off. All right. So the one thing that I love about London's Porter is, again, we really get the chance to sample something that I consider a reference beer. When people say, what should a porter taste like, this is the one thing that is held up time and time again. And I'm really glad that this is part of our conversation today. The phrase that I always use when we're talking about porter is a Tootsie Roll. It's just something about the caramelization and the sugar content within a dark Tootsie Roll that is very close to what I think of, when you're really talking about a porter. And so a lot of times when I'm talking about porters, I'm talking about in relationship to that particular taste profile. In fact, what I wrote down was a bitter Tootsie Roll, which is just a very simple 3 words, for me, exactly what this is. The thing I like about it is that the bittering in this is not overt. It's not invasive, and it's so well balanced. And there's something about just a simple element about the finish on this is it's a little bit dry. It's not astringent. It's not, but all these things and just this wonderful, subtle harmony, about it is what I really love, about this beer. So here in the studio today, we've had this beer out for a little bit, and it's kind of it's almost nearly at room temperature at this point. And you're right, it has opened up, and I love the way that Reverend Mark described, the way that have it served cold, and then actually enjoy the element of this beer kind of opening up, as it kind of warms up as well. And so this is a really great beer. If I were probably trapped in a place and I didn't know what to order, and I saw this on the menu, and I was definitely in the mood for a porter, I'd have no problem ordering this, hands down. My Suds rating for Fuller's London Porter is going to be a 4. My body should really not make that sound. So a really great beer all the way around, and it was a real joy talking about these beers from Fuller's. Well, we're going to take a quick segment break here. Then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about beer in each of our respective markets, just kind of a free-form discussion. And so come right back. Well, thanks for coming back to Sips, Suds, and Smokes here in the fake British accents that we have today for a show about fillers. And we've had a good time talking about these 3 beers, and so I thought that we'd spend a minute and just kind of chat with our chaps, across the pond and talk about beer in general. So I guess one of the things I really enjoy about having Steve, here on the show with us today is we get to talk, with people in the, in the beer industry all the time, and from a broad range of countries as well. And so that's what I really love about having Steve here on today is that he's really seen the craft beer market kind of evolving there in the UK, and we've watched things really kind of explode here in the US as well. So I guess it was one thing you said earlier, Steve, was that hoppy IPAs were very prevalent, kind of in as a summer seasonal. I guess that would be kind of the first question that I wanted to throw out to everybody here is, do you think that the seasonal aspects of the way that a lot of breweries are kind of approaching beers, is that something that's indicative geographically, or do you think that is just a way of basically driving products through a cycle that have an element of time around it? What do you think?
Well, I think historically seasonal beers made sense. I don't know that it makes any sense anymore. I mean, we have refrigeration. So I mean, like the Maibach, for instance, was introduced at a time after it had been lagering in caves, in the early spring, and then you had your Oktoberfest. So I mean, I think there are certain beers that are maybe more palatable during certain times of the year. Mm-hmm. We might think, a light, crisp wheat type beer in the middle of the summer. A lawnmower beer, sorts.
Boat beers.
Yeah.
Lawnmower beers. Yeah.
But I think it's the latter. I think right now that, a lot of the seasonal aspect, maybe the holiday season with the spice is something that's still peculiar to this time of the year, but I think a lot of times it's just a marketing ploy. I'm a bit of a cynic about that.
Steve, how about it for you? I mean, do you find that seasons drive, production schedules at breweries?
I don't think so, no. I think a lot of it comes down to individual tastes. So, porters and IPAs will be available throughout the year. But personally, for me, I will really enjoy the pale ales, IPAs, double IPAs, probably until I get to about October, November sort of time, and then I don't know what it is, but my body starts to crave a darker beer, so I'll start moving into porter and stout territory. I'll drink those throughout the winter, and then again coming into February, March sort of time, I'll be looking for something to bring me out of my beer hibernation almost, where I've been drinking these dark beers and I've been wrapped up in these lovely dark flavours, and then all of a sudden I want something to awaken me. I've gone on record a number of times to say that I'm IPA centric, so my go-to beer is an IPA, or it's a double IPA, or it's an imperial IPA, or it's a treble IPA, or it's something that's been hopped to within an inch of its life. Even in the midst of winter, I will shun those beers for something that's dark and warming and gives me something that will just cuddle me up on the sofa until I go to sleep. I don't think the breweries are particularly playing to that. I think they will brew beers dependent on the ingredients that are available to them in the UK. There are a lot of breweries in the UK right now that are brewing incredibly good beers throughout the year. Some of them are seasonal, and some of them are just their standard beers that they will produce time and time again.
We're really fortunate to have what is one of the most passionate people about English beers here at the table, and Dave is really, this is a style of beer that he loves to brew on a regular basis. I mean, Dave's Brown is really one of a great beer. One of our most popular shows that we've had is a beer that we actually talked about that's made with Heather. And so, Dave, when you think about these style of English ales, I mean, where do you kind of think all this is going right now for people that are making, English style ales?
Well, I think that as a whole, the craft beer scene is probably going back more towards session beers. For the last few years, we've gone bigger, hoppier, stronger beers until you get to the point where every other beer you drink is a palate wrecker. Or it's a barley wine by another name. You can call it a triple IPA, but if it's 9%, you're drinking a barley wine at that point. What I like about the milds, the bitters, porters, is that it's kind of like what we were saying earlier, that there's nothing that the British can do well that Americans can't come in and screw up. We'll take it. We'll jack up the ABV. We'll throw a lot more hops in it. We'll do a lot of those things.
Just double it.
Yeah,
just double everything.
Exactly.
Double it and then double it again. Yeah, exactly.
Seek the Holy Grail.
It's about going after the best. I agree.
And that's kind of the American way, I guess. But to me, you have to look at where things come from. And all the IPAs and all the pales and all these different things that we're putting in barrels and throwing fruit and nuts in and coffee and just whatever crap you can find in the yard. It all comes from somewhere, and it all
fresh craft ingredients.
And it all comes from England. Lagers, you can say they come from Germany for the most part and that sort of thing, and Czech Republic. But, a good ale is a beautiful thing. And it doesn't have to have, enough hops in there to blow your mouth off, right? It can be balanced. It can be clean. And that's what I like about English ales. And I think as people... all the beer nerds and hipsters out there, as they really come back around to learning what a good beer is, it's about balance. And that's what English ales are to me. And I think that's going to be more of what people are going to look for in these session beers. And and I'd like to ask Steve, what has the American beer scene, what's the impact been on England now in your beer scene?
That's a great question, because I think what the American scene has done it's reinvigorated the UK brewing scene. We've started to look at what we're brewing and taking styles that the Americans have. Let's be fair, you've originally taken from the UK styles, you've made it better and bigger and bolder, and you've put that into a package, and we've gone, you know what, actually, the Americans are doing beers better than we should be doing, so let's take that back. And I think what you're getting now in the UK is breweries that are saying, actually, the beers that we can produce are better than what they can produce in the States. And it's almost just like this cycle that's going round and round and round and round. And right now, where we're at in the UK is it's an interesting term you use there in terms of session beers. The session beer in the UK in the last year has probably gone from being a 4% pale ale to being a 5.5% IPA. That's now the UK session beer is a 5.5% IPA, and we're now saying, well, what can we do? What that's better than that, and bigger than that? And we're now producing those beers, and we're saying, here's your next beer. Here's the next UK's craft beer, and they're being produced, and people are loving them, and they're lapping them up, and they're almost to a point. And I think there's a movement now in terms of saying, well, actually, what are the US going to do next? Because we've taken back that IPA style. The UK have taken back the IPA, and it's now our own. To America, what are you going to do now that's going to counteract that? And I know that there's a lot of people that are saying the next thing that US breweries are going to start producing are those sessionable, woody, twiggy IPAs that were originally based in the UK, that have got that brown, earthy flavours to them, and that's where you guys are going next. Why we're just going to continue producing these great beers that everybody wants to drink.
Steve, I'd be curious also to know whether or not the British are now developing other kinds of hop strains so that as you reclaim the IPA, it works in a better way.
We are absolutely looking at that. We are working with hop farmers in the UK to look at how we can develop hybrid hops that have got some of the flavours that you guys can produce over there in the States, that the weather will allow you to produce, that the UK traditional weather won't allow us to produce. There are styles that are coming out now, and know, for instance, that Brewdog are looking at developing their own hop that they can only use in their beers, and it's like, it's like, what can we do with the hops that are native to the UK that will begin to challenge the big citrusy flavours that we get from US beers?
It's a natural part of the show.
Hop hiccup in the middle there, yeah.
Cheers.
Absolutely.
Well, let's wrap things up for today. Just really great stuff all the way around on Fuller's. Thanks to all of our listeners here at Sips, Suds, and Smokes. You want me to read this in a British accent, guys?
No,
you're fine. You carry on.
How about Australia?
No.
You can catch all of our episodes, which are far better than this, online on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, Uncle John's Basement, and Spreaker, our native media host in the UK. Our terrestrial radio station hosts are always expanding, and if you'd like to hear this show on your favorite radio station, send them a note, send them a pint, and copy us as well. You can reach us online anytime at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Dave now has fan mail, and you can reach Dave at leavethecorkin@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every single day at SipSudsSmokes is our handle on Facebook, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. Listen, do us a favor and take the time to rate this episode if you're listening to us online. That's a great big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well. Well, I want to thank all of my co-hosts for today. Steve, tell us a little bit about Beer O'Clock. I really enjoyed listening to your show and your other colleague that's on there. I believe, Mark?
Mark.
You have a
yes.
Mark on your end. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. How about that?
Mark and I have been going for a couple of years now. We're about to launch season 6 in February. You can catch us on beeroclockshow.co.uk. That's where you'll find everything that we're up to. We're also on Twitter at Beer O'Clock Show. We're on Instagram at Beer O'Clock Show as well. Send us your pics of your best beer porn. That's what we want to see on Instagram. You can check us out on Untapped. You can find me at Beer O'Clock Show Steve. You can find Mark at Roku. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher as well. You can download all the episodes of the show via those two mediums. And we're just there. We're basically raising the flag for the beer podcast in the UK.
Well, I'd like to think this is first of many collaborative shows that we'll get to have together.
Let's hope so.
Because
yes.
Beer is a universal language, and we love talking about beer and talking about beer, or rating beer. Dave, please help me.
We love drinking beer, too,
Yeah, right,
apparently.
yeah. Drink a little too much. Anyway, I really look forward to a lot more shows with Steve and Mark, and Beer O'Clock fans enjoying some Sip, Suds, and Smokes shows, as well as letting our audience have more exposure to Beer O'Clock as well, because we only get to talk about a tenth of probably all the beer that we could ever even get to. So a lot of room to talk about a lot of stuff in this space. So, Steve, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me on this evening. It's been the highlight of my week.
That's a rough week.
Wow,
dude.
man. You faked it well.
That's my catchphrase. I'm there. I was gonna go for put a cork in it, which is someone's catchphrase on
Which
your
is
side.
Dave's,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
But I went for my own catchphrase, which is highlight of my week.
He stole it from
Yeah.
me. Dave, thank you for being here.
Leave that cork in, you wankers.
Reverend Mark, thanks for being here.
I'm not dead yet.
Very good. Listen, this is good old boy Mike asking you to keep up the top and keep on sipping. Cheerio.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sip, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see y'all next time.